This is a full story. Puppy wishes you all a happy and enjoyable story. The day Rocky confessed to the beautiful transfer student, everyone thought I would break down, running over to cry and stop him. But until the confession ended, I didn't show up. What Rocky didn't know was that I was wearing his roommate's hoodie, sitting on his roommate's bed, innocently asking, "I wet your bed, how will you sleep tonight?" Peter looked away, swallowed hard, and tossed me a towel. "Go dry your hair. I'll change the sheets for you to sleep later." Rocky was going to confess to that beautiful transfer student. He informed everyone in advance, asking them to keep it from me. Little did he know, a busybody couldn't hold it in and told me, "Who doesn't know I like Rocky? I dream of marrying him." This time, Rocky truly fell for that girl at first sight. I was afraid I would cry, throw a tantrum, and even consider suicide. Such a dramatic love story. Who wouldn't want to watch? Everyone was waiting for me to break down and cause a scene. But unfortunately, by the time Rocky successfully confessed, I still hadn't appeared. The crowd was layered 3 deep, and their enthusiasm waned. Even Rocky's face didn't show much joy. He embraced his new girlfriend and took out his phone. Not a single call or message. Rocky frowned slightly. Then he called to everyone, "Tonight, it's on me. Everyone gets a share." The onlookers cheered. I, who had been standing behind the bushes, finally stepped out. Someone with keen eyes spotted me and shouted, "It's Haley. Haley is here." I knew it. How could Haley resist coming? Rocky suddenly looked up, and the moment he saw me, his lips curled up slightly. I ignored the onlookers. I walked straight to Rocky. "Haley." Rocky pulled his new girlfriend closer. He looked at me, his voice flat. "Feelings can't be forced. We've known each other for over 10 years. I don't want to say anything hurtful and ruin our past bond. From now on, I'll still see you as my sister. If you need anything, you can still come to me." After saying this, his voice dropped a bit. "With so many people watching, don't make a scene, just go back." "Rocky," I interrupted him, slowly stepping closer. He furrowed his brow again. "Haley, be obedient." I smiled, handing him the bracelet I had just taken off my wrist. "I came just to return this to you." Seeing the bracelet, Rocky's face suddenly darkened. "Haley, what are you trying to pull? You can keep the bracelet. I won't bother you anymore." Rocky stared at me, his voice growing colder. "I don't care about this little money. If you don't want it, just throw it away." As soon as he finished, I turned and tossed the bracelet into a nearby trash can. "Those things I gave you before, you can just throw them away too." After that, I didn't look at him again, and walked away. Rocky stood there until Haley's figure disappeared from view. His expression remained somewhat grim. Nearby, a friend hurried to smooth things over. Haley just cares about her pride, putting on a brave front." "Rocky, just wait, she'll regret it tonight. Who knows, as soon as we leave, she might come crying back to rummage through the trash." Rocky chuckled. "Let her be. If it weren't for our family's reputations, who'd bother with her?" "All right, enough about her. We need to celebrate tonight. Don't let her ruin the mood." Rocky glanced at his beautiful new girlfriend and tossed aside Haley's annoying face. After all, by tomorrow, Haley would act as if nothing had happened, waiting for him downstairs in the dorm, pestering him to go to class together. He had seen too many of these dramas over the years. When I reached the riverbank, it was pouring rain. I stood in the rain with an umbrella, thinking about the dreams I had a few days ago. In my dreams, I cried and caused a scene over Rocky confessing to Serena to force him to break up. I jumped into the river that night, but what was the outcome? I nearly lost my life. Rocky stayed at the hospital for 5 minutes before leaving decisively. The Maria family that adopted me thought my attempts to die were embarrassing. Because of Rocky's attitude, they felt I had no value anymore. They forced me to drop out and sent me back to my terrible biological parents. In the end, my life spiraled down, dying tragically in a foreign land. After my death, the person who collected my fragmented remains was the very person I had always distanced myself from and feared. And Rocky was happily married, never showing up at all. In these days, everything in my dreams came true. If it weren't for these dreams, I would have been frantically calling Rocky, then prepared to jump into the river as a threat. I'm grateful for this dream, as if I were reborn. I could gradually change my predetermined tragic fate. On the 3rd attempt to call that number, someone finally picked up. I tightly gripped the phone, pressing it to my ear. Peter's name lingered on my tongue several times before I slowly spoke it. The heavy rain drowned out the noise of the world. Only Peter's voice came through, lazy and heavy. "Haley? Peter, it's raining heavily. I can't go back from the riverbank. Can you come pick me up? There was silence on the other end for a few seconds. I nervously gripped the umbrella handle, my palms sweaty. In my dreams, when Peter collected my remains, it seemed he cried. His tears fell drop by drop onto my rotting flesh and bones. I could feel that burning sensation even in the dream. Later, he carried a small bottle of my ashes with him, for life, and lived a lonely life. I couldn't help but tear up, choking back a sob. Why are you crying? Peter's voice suddenly came through. It was still that indifferent tone, even slightly impatient. I never said I wouldn't go. So when will you come? Wait, I'll be there in 20 minutes. Okay, I'll wait for you, Peter. He didn't say anything more, and the call ended. 15 minutes later, I gave my umbrella to a mother and child seeking shelter from the rain. So by the time Peter arrived, I was completely soaked. When he got out of the car, his lips were pressed tight, his expression cold as if filled with frost. I brushed my wet bangs aside and smiled brightly at him. Peter, you're so punctual. Haley, you might as well be stupid. He kept a straight face, grabbing my arm and pushing me into the car. Then he tossed me a soft blanket. Dry yourself off. Don't mess up my car. He glanced at me through the rearview mirror, then quickly turned the car around. Oh. I obediently wrapped myself in the blanket. I couldn't help but steal glances at him focused on driving. When he showed no expression, he always looked aloof and unapproachable. Many girls at school liked him, but no one dared to confess. He was Rocky's roommate. I often went to Rocky's dorm, and each time, Peter hated my presence. Even now, although he came to pick me up, his attitude remained icy. When he shoved me into the car earlier, his grip was especially tight. My wrist still hurt. Red marks left behind. It was hard to tell he had secretly liked me all along. I slowly lowered my eyelashes. Everything in the dream happened as it should. But now, because of my change, many things had also changed. Would that Peter still like me? If he didn't like me at all, wouldn't my actions just create more trouble for him? Back to the dorm, Peter suddenly turned to look at me. My heart raced unexpectedly, and I instinctively replied, "Yeah." Back to your dorm. Peter grasped the steering wheel and scoffed. Rocky won't be back tonight. I know. I clutched the edge of the blanket, twisting it tighter. I'm not looking for him. The car suddenly slammed to a stop by the roadside. Peter turned to look at me, his icy gaze sending chills through me. Haley, don't treat me like I'm part of your little game. I didn't. He fixed me with a steady gaze, then grabbed his phone. I'll call you a ride. You can go back by yourself. Peter, I bit my lip hard and snatched his phone away. Haley. He looked at me, but there was no anger or disdain in his eyes. Just a deep gaze filled with countless emotions. I suddenly felt an indescribable sadness. Peter, I don't want to go back to the dorm. They all laugh at me. I don't want to go home either. Can you let me stay in your dorm for one night? I hid his phone behind me, my voice growing softer. Of course, if you really hate me and don't want to see me, forget it. As soon as the words left my mouth, tears fell silently from my eyes, one by one. Peter didn't say another word to me, but he started the car again. The car drove toward the school, finally stopping downstairs at his dorm. I followed Peter into the dorm. He went to the closet and handed me a clean hoodie. The bathroom's over there. He was tall, and the hoodie was oversized on me, almost reaching my knees, like a dress. After taking a shower, I slipped into the hoodie and emerged with bare legs. Peter glanced at me before averting his gaze. I walked past Rocky's bed and sat down on Peter's. My wet hair dripped water, quickly soaking the sheets. The shampoo and body wash on me all smelled like Peter. In the small space, the same scent lingered, a quietly growing and hard to describe intimacy. Peter took out a cigarette pack and coughed lightly. I'm going to smoke. He went out to the balcony. I curiously looked around Peter's bed. The light gray sheets were clean and tidy. There was a computer and some books on the desk, also organized. Just as I was about to check out the items on his desk, my phone suddenly rang. Flashing on the screen was Rocky's name. I didn't answer. He called again almost immediately, with no sign of stopping. I simply put my phone on silent and returned it to my bag. Peter, I shouted towards the balcony. He quickly turned around, pinching out his cigarette, before coming over. What's up? I was sitting on the bed, needing to look up at him. Peter and I locked eyes for 2 seconds before he looked away, but I noticed his ears seemed a bit red. I got your sheets wet. How will we sleep tonight? He glanced at me, then looked at the wet spots on the sheets. His Adam's apple bobbed intensely before he turned to grab a towel for me. Go dry your hair first. I'll change the sheets, and you can sleep later. After saying that, he went to the closet for clean sheets. I held the towel, thinking about how red his ears had been, and couldn't help but smile. When I came out with dry hair, Peter had already changed the sheets. You can go to sleep now. What about you? He pulled out a chair without looking back. I'm playing games. Oh. I sat on his bed somewhat disheartened. Peter grabbed his headphones and was about to put them on, when his phone suddenly rang. He glanced at the screen, then looked back at me. Before answering, "Rocky, what's up?" My heart suddenly tightened, and I instinctively held my breath. "Yeah, I'm in the dorm. You said someone saw Haley coming to our dorm building?" Peter turned to look at me again. In a moment of panic, I didn't wait for him to finish. I got up and sat on his lap, wrapping my arms around his neck. As Peter tried to push me away, I leaned close to his ear. "Peter, say I'm not here." Under my fingers around his neck, Peter's skin instantly felt hot. I saw the blue veins on the side of his neck, tense and slightly raised. His Adam's apple moved violently, his heart racing rapidly. I tilted my head back to look at him while he lowered his gaze to meet mine. In his eyes, desire gradually spread. "No, I've been in the dorm the whole time. She hasn't come." Ask someone else." After Peter said that, he hung up the phone. He threw his phone aside, his long fingers gripping my waist. Through the hoodie, he tightened his hold, pulling me into his embrace. I could distinctly feel the heat building between us. The buzzing in my ears made me want to escape, but Peter held me tighter. "Haley." His voice was hoarse. His hot breath brushed against my ear and neck. I shrank back, trying to avoid him, but his kiss landed directly on my lips. "Don't pull me in. I don't want to be with you like this." "Peter." I shifted my body, trying to adjust my position. The heat was about to erupt, fierce and frightening. In the moments between breaths, I finally found the chance to speak. "If you don't want to be with me, why kiss me?" Peter lowered his head, our foreheads touching. As our breaths intertwined, he closed his eyes, seeming to struggle to calm himself. "Also, do you know how to kiss? My lips are swollen." "Haley." Peter didn't open his eyes. He simply relaxed his grip on my waist slightly. His fingers were long and strong. Through the hoodie, he squeezed my waist, mixing pain and longing. "Peter." I couldn't help but frown, wanting to push his hand away. But Peter held my fingers tighter. "Haley, don't move. I'll be gentle this time." As soon as the words left his mouth, his hands found their way to my lower back. He pressed me fully against him, tight. This kiss was long but gentle. At the end, he became a bit out of control, kissing deeply. "Peter." I lightly hit him, then bit him during a breath. "Haley." Peter's voice was hoarse and strained. His entire body tightened. The heat in his palms felt like it could melt me away. Peter suddenly buried his face in my neck, letting out a low groan. The volcano erupted, then calmed down. But soon, it was on the verge of exploding again. Peter gently pushed me away and pulled me to stand up. I could only see that his expression was strange. The air was filled with a strange scent. Unable to help myself, I asked, "Peter, what happened just now?" His ears were as red as blood. The usually aloof man now had deep desire in his eyes. "I'm going to take a shower." He stood up, lowered his gaze to fix my messy hoodie. "You should sleep first." Before I could say anything, Peter had quickly entered the bathroom. When the sound of water arose, I lay on Peter's bed, rolling over. I used the back of my hand to cool my burning face. I felt as if I had an inkling of something. However, Peter was tall, and he often exercised with a lean physique. His nose was high and straight, and his jawline was sharp. His fingers were long and strong. He didn't seem like, well, the type of guy who would be so fast. Could it be that he had never had a girlfriend and never been close to a girl? Thinking this, my heart filled with sweet little bubbles. As I lay on Peter's pillow, I accidentally touched a pearl earring. From under it, the earring looked familiar. It was the pair I loved to wear every day. Once, when I visited Rocky's dorm, I accidentally lost one and couldn't find it anywhere, so it turned out Peter had picked it up. Suddenly, I remembered. In those dreams before, it seemed Peter always had this earring with him. I stared blankly for a while, then put the earring back under his pillow. The sound of the wind stopped. When Peter came out, he was wearing a dark blue loungewear set. After the steam rose, his skin looked like white jade. His hair fell obediently, and his usual sharp coldness faded a bit. I don't know why, but I felt Peter looked a little good. Just as I was about to call him, a faint voice came from outside the door. My expression changed, and I froze. Among the voices outside, one was clearly Rocky's. Peter's expression darkened, but he reacted faster than I did. When Rocky pushed the door open, my clothes had already been stuffed into the wardrobe, and my shoes were hidden deep under the bed. Peter was just lifting the blanket to get into bed. The dorm only had a night light on, casting a dim light. I was hidden under Peter's covers, with only slight movements visible. Even if Rocky came close, he wouldn't notice anything unusual. "Why is it so early to turn off the lights?" Rocky asked curiously. I got rained on. My head hurts a bit. As Peter spoke, he gently held my restless wrist under the blanket. The bed was only 1.3 meters wide, and Peter was tall, occupying a lot of space. My whole body was almost pressed against him. Breathing Haley brushed against his waist. I could clearly feel his waist muscles were tense. All right then. Rockey didn't turn on the light. He sat down in the chair, taking out his phone to call. After a few calls with no answer, Rockey was clearly getting frustrated. Peter, do you think Haley is doing this on purpose? What? I just confessed to Serena today, and she's here to mess things up. On TV, they reported a female college student jumped into a river over love troubles. I thought it was her being hopeless, abandoning Serena and speeding off. But they didn't rescue her. I called her all night, but she didn't pick up, and now she's missing. Rockey slammed his phone down on the table. She's doing this on purpose, deliberately ruining my date tonight. At this point, Rockey sneered. I think she's going to cling to me for life. Not necessarily. Peter suddenly replied. Rockey was a bit surprised. Not necessarily? Peter, you've seen how she's clung to me over these 2 years. You're also quite annoyed by her, never giving her a good look. Hearing this, I couldn't help but bite Peter's waist. He winced in pain, instinctively blocking with his hand, but his fingers brushed against my lips. I simply bit down on his finger. Peter's whole body tensed suddenly, letting out a low hiss. What's wrong with you? Nothing, just a leg cramp. Peter's voice was hoarse. After speaking, he coughed twice. Forget it. You rest well. I won't bother you. Rockey said as he stood up. I'll use the restroom and then leave. As he pushed the door into the bathroom, I suddenly remembered something. When I showered earlier, I had washed my socks. They were still hanging in the bathroom. Sure enough, not 2 minutes later, Rockey came out with a mischievous smile. Peter, did you bring a girl back to the dorm? Seems like you've hidden it well. Which big beauty managed to snag our high and mighty Peter? Don't talk nonsense. Rockey walked a few steps towards the bed. Sleeping this early? Hiding someone in the bed? Rockey, Peter suddenly deepened his tone. All right, I won't go over. Rockey halted, but looked with interest at Peter's bed. Got a set? I have extras. Want one? Peter gently held my neck under the blanket, making me stay still on him. Then he glanced at Rockey, his voice a bit cold. Don't joke about girls like that. Are you serious? Rockey seemed a bit surprised. Peter's lips tightened, his throat bobbing. Yeah. If the light were a bit brighter, Rockey would see how uncomfortable Peter looked. After all, he was holding my neck to keep me still, but I could still move other parts. Being under the blanket, no one could see anything, so I carefully touched Peter's abs. With each touch, his muscles tightened a bit. I cautiously moved lower, and when I reached his V-line, Peter reacted quite strongly, which startled me. Well then, I won't disturb you. I'll stay out tonight. Rockey implied something, glancing at Peter's bed again. Inside, he couldn't help but feel a bit disdainful. He usually seemed indifferent to girls, cold to them, but now it didn't seem like he was a chaste high and mighty type. If he was right, there was a girl hidden under the covers with Peter. He played quite lavishly, but Rockey didn't expose it. His relationship with Peter was all right, even though Peter was more popular among girls, which annoyed him a bit. They didn't have any serious discord. Rockey turned and left the dorm. When the door closed, I pulled the covers off. Peter, I'm about to suffocate. Peter leaned against the headboard, his deep gaze fixed on me. The dim light fell on his handsome, sculpted features, casting large shadows. I found myself staring blankly. They say light enhances beauty, and it was the same for men. Seeing a handsome guy under flickering shadows, of course, it created a special atmosphere. Haley, Peter slowly sat up. He reached out, brushing my messy hair aside. Then he cupped my face, speaking seriously. I'm not annoyed with you, nor have I given you a cold shoulder. Don't take his words to heart. After saying that, Peter released his hands. He got out of bed. You should sleep. What about you, Peter? He took a cigarette pack and pointed to the balcony. I'll smoke a bit, then sleep. Just then, I suddenly sneezed. Peter paused. I grabbed his sleeve, frowning pitifully. I think I'm getting sick. My head really hurts. Peter looked at me for a moment. Let go. I'll get you some medicine. After I took the medicine, I still held onto him. Peter, I'm a bit cold. The blanket is too thin. But this time, Peter pushed my hand away. Haley, Rockey left. You don't need to do this anymore. What does that have to do with him? Peter self-deprecatingly smiled. What are you going to the river for tonight? That's when I realized. Rockey had just mentioned a girl jumping into the river, leading him to misunderstand. He thought I was going to the river because I was feeling hopeless. Calling him to return to the dorm was deliberate revenge on Rockey. Actually, I knew it was normal for him to think that. These 2 years, Maria's foster parents pressured me heavily. After the real daughter of the Maria family was found, they once considered sending me back to my biological parents. Later, possibly because they saw the value in a marriage alliance. They reluctantly kept me. So for Rockey, I was like a lifeline. I thought we had grown up together, and there would always be some bond. He would rescue me from the mire. I placed all my hopes on Rockey, but all of this, in others' eyes, was evidence of my obsessive love for him. Not to mention Peter. He and Rockey were roommates. He must have witnessed countless moments of my infatuation. Peter, I wanted to explain, but he was already standing up. Set the alarm, leave early tomorrow. Don't let anyone see. After all, this kind of thing isn't good for girls. Peter, but he didn't stop or turn back. I clenched my teeth. Then why did you kiss me so many times tonight? Just now you did that. Are you not going to take responsibility? Peter suddenly stopped. He turned to look at me. I sat on the bed, my eyes red, but holding back tears. I know you hate me. Every time I came here before, you ignored me. But tonight, still thank you for coming to pick me up and sheltering me. If you really don't want any more ties with me, then I'll leave now. I got off the bed. Not finding my shoes didn't matter. I walked barefoot toward the door. As I walked past Peter with my head down, I silently let tears fall. Haley. Peter grabbed me. I just said, I don't hate you. Then do you want to take responsibility? I shook off his hand, looking at him defiantly. You kissed me, hugged me, and did that. Peter suddenly held my chin, kissing me fiercely. Haley. He captured my lips, his breath growing heavier. If you want to provoke me, then let's provoke to the end. I wrapped my arms around his slim waist, standing on tiptoe to meet this deep kiss. Okay. During the October holiday, I went to the city where my biological parents lived. I stayed there for 3 days. When I left, that couple of wretched people, who indulged in every vice, had already been taken away by the police, awaiting the harsh, merciless punishment of the law. Human trafficking, gambling, forcing women into prostitution. I had solid evidence for each of their crimes, thanks to those dreams. I didn't have to wait for rebirth or the next life. In this lifetime, I could completely rid myself of these demons and see them receive the punishment they deserved. As I boarded the plane, I let out a long breath of air. The biggest worry was finally settled. At that moment, I felt an immense sense of freedom and relaxation. When the plane landed in the capital, I first texted Peter to let him know I was safe. He didn't know my true purpose for this trip. He thought I had just gone on a short outing with friends. I'll come find you tonight. Is everything in your house ready? Peter had moved to an off-campus apartment. He was already a senior, rarely needing to return to school. Besides, it wasn't convenient to live with Rockey. Everything's ready. Should I come pick you up? Sure. Haley, what's up? Today is Rockey's birthday. He organized a party and wants me to bring my girlfriend. I had completely forgotten that Rockey's birthday fell on National Day. Haley, do you want to come with me? I didn't answer, feeling a bit torn inside. It wasn't that I was unwilling to publicly acknowledge my relationship with Peter, but Maria's family might soon sever ties with me. At that point, my shameful background would be exposed. I knew Peter wouldn't mind, but I couldn't bear for him to be criticized. Just like in my dreams, they would blame him for being with a worthless woman, for being unfilial and ungrateful, breaking his family's heart. But as Peter said that day, since I initiated things with him, I had to follow through. One can't have it both ways. Peter, I took a deep breath. Do you want me to go? Of course, he answered without hesitation. Then come pick me up. I'll go with you. Holding my phone, I looked up and saw my own face in the window. As I said this, I was smiling, radiantly so. Haley, look outside. My heart seemed to skip a beat. That moment felt like a slow-motion scene from a movie. My smile was still blooming, and the electronic announcement faded away. Amid the bustling crowd, I saw Peter. Only Peter. I dropped my suitcase and ran towards him without a care. Peter stood still, but he opened his arms for me. I jumped into his embrace, and he caught me steadily. With such momentum, he didn't even take a step back. I wrapped my arms around his neck, beaming. Wow, your core strength is impressive. He glanced down at me and chuckled. Your waist isn't bad either. Want to give it a try? I poked his hard abs and whispered in his ear, laughing softly. Just a bit too fast, though. Haley. He seemed a bit helpless, yet youthful and spirited, determined not to back down. Just you wait. Don't beg for mercy. Crying won't help. Tonight's birthday party was as usual, with Rockey inviting a crowd. Serena dressed up exceptionally well, stunning everyone. When they sat together, they were undeniably eye-catching. Serena was glowing with compliments from several girls, but she couldn't help but glance at Rockey, who seemed a bit distracted. Rockey. Serena called him several times before he snapped back to reality. What's up? It's getting late, and everyone's hungry. What's the rush? Not everyone is here yet. Who's still missing? Yeah. Who hasn't arrived? Peter hasn't come. Oh, I just remembered, Haley isn't here yet. Do you think Haley will come? Rocky's birthday. She wouldn't miss this kind of occasion. Suddenly, Rockey interrupted everyone. I didn't invite her. Even if she comes, I won't let her in. Rockey, don't be angry. It's your birthday. Serena quickly soothed him. Don't let unimportant people ruin your mood, okay? True. Rockey glanced at his beautiful girlfriend. Serena was truly stunning. Haley was pretty too, but not in the same bold, alluring way. So he had been captivated by Serena at first sight. However, after winning her over, he realized she was just ordinary. For nearly a month, Haley hadn't waited for him downstairs, hadn't clung to him to go to class or the cafeteria. She had suddenly vanished from his world. Even when they occasionally crossed paths at school, she would turn to avoid him. Rockey had to admit he felt quite unaccustomed. Yes, he attributed it all to habit. He just wasn't used to someone who used to revolve around him suddenly growing cold. He didn't like Haley, nor would he risk angering his elders over her, this fake heiress. But they had known each other for years. Rockey thought, just for tonight, if Haley couldn't help but come back to him, he wouldn't even need her to back down. As long as she shed a few tears with red eyes, he would always leave her a place beside him. Suddenly, the door to the private room was pushed open. Guess who I just saw? The boy who walked in was full of gossip, but his gaze fell on Rockey's face. Who? Stop keeping us in suspense. Guess who it is? It's not Haley, is it? It really is Haley. Rockey, see, we told you. Haley can't live without you. Look. Can't hold back tonight, can you? Rockey didn't speak, but the gloomy look on his face clearly dissipated for the most part. Serena, however, changed her expression, tugging lightly at Rockey's sleeve. She spoke up in a small, somewhat aggrieved voice. Rockey, can you make Haley leave? She chased you for so long, and it really bothers me. Rockey looked at Serena and suddenly found her much more pleasing to the eye than before. His mood inexplicably improved, but Haley's recent behavior really angered him. Even if he decided to forgive her now, he had to punish her. Sure, let her get lost, Rockey said nonchalantly, pinching Serena's cheek. Who are you telling to get lost? The slightly open door was pushed open, and Peter strode in. His voice wasn't loud, but it fell like a golden stone with an indescribable pressure. The large room suddenly became utterly silent, because everyone saw that there was a girl following behind Peter, and that girl was Haley. Rockey didn't move, but the wine glass he was playing with in his hand suddenly shattered. Serena screamed in fright. Blood, Rockey, you're bleeding. Get out. Rockey, I said get out. Can't you understand? Rockey suddenly stood up and smashed the shattered wine glass to the ground. Serena stood there, stunned for a moment, before running out crying. The people in the private room also left tactfully one after another. Rockey's hand hung by his side with blood dripping to the ground. But he didn't feel the pain at all, just staring at Peter. After a while, he raised his hand and pointed at me. Peter, aren't you going to explain? The fingers hidden under the sleeve were gripped tighter by Peter. His fingers were dry and strong, giving an unspeakable sense of security. What's there to explain? Why is Haley with you? You invited me to bring my girlfriend to your birthday party. Have you forgotten? Peter held my hand and pulled me to his side, holding me close. Rockey seemed to be instantly enraged. His bloody hand grabbed the cup in front of him and smashed it on the ground. Peter, do you have any idea Haley is mine? What kind of person is she to you? Girlfriend or fiancé? Peter didn't back down, or is it that a girl who liked you is labeled as yours, your property? Rockey's eyes were bloodshot, red as a beast enraged. You knew Haley liked me, and you still fucking hit on her? Rockey, he didn't hit on her. I squeezed Peter's hand and looked at Rockey. It was me who took the initiative. Also, I don't like you. I should say, I don't like you anymore. I looked at him and suddenly found that I had already let go. After all, any girl with a bit of self-respect won't like a person who never respects her at all. She also wouldn't like a person who is indifferent and calls her at will, acting superior. Perhaps there was some hazy affection when we grew up together as childhood sweethearts. But after my identity was exposed and his attitude changed drastically, that affection had actually long since vanished. What are you saying, Haley? Rockey seemed to have heard some kind of joke. You almost jumped into the river for me, and now you say you don't like me? I never thought of jumping into the river for you. That night I went to the river just to find a reason for Peter to pick me up. Rockey suddenly froze. After a while, he stared at me with his eyes wide open, biting his teeth and speaking one word at a time. So, that night in the dorm, the person in Peter's bed, was it you? That's right, it's me. Rockey, focus on your relationship. I said that day, I will never cling to you again. This statement is forever unrepentant. After saying this, I didn't look at him again. I pulled Peter and turned to leave. Peter, let's go home. I want to see what our new house looks like. But Peter didn't move. He looked at Rockey, his gaze light yet sharp with pressure. Rockey, I don't want to hear anyone speak ill of my girlfriend. Rockey was completely broken, losing composure. Peter, who do you think you are? Peter simply smiled indifferently. If you don't know who I am, maybe ask your dad at home. Rockey suddenly fell silent. His gaze slowly shifted from Peter's face to mine. His originally handsome face now looked strangely menacing. Haley, Peter probably doesn't know you're not the eldest daughter of the Maria family. Hiding such a big thing from him isn't right, don't you think? Although I had long been prepared for my identity to be revealed to the world, but being uncovered so suddenly by Rockey still made me feel embarrassed and at a loss. The hand held by Peter was almost instantly stiff and cold. Cold sweat oozed out densely from the palm, layer by layer. Perhaps seeing my face turn deathly pale, Rockey laughed. It seems that you are indeed hiding it from him. I said it. If Peter knew your true identity, he would only avoid you. Even if you offered yourself, he would not touch you with a single finger. Rockey, Peter suddenly let go of my hand. He expressionlessly rolled up his sleeves fold by fold. Then he took off his watch and handed it to me. In the past, I only thought you were a promiscuous and fickle person, not a good thing, but not extremely evil either. But now I find. Peter took a step forward, grabbed Rockey's collar, and firmly pressed him against the wall. You are not only a despicable scumbag. Rockey was furious and wanted to fight back, but Peter punched him hard in the face. But also a coward and a waste. And, Rockey, I am different from you. I don't like some eldest lady from the Maria family or the eldest lady from the Haley family. I just like Haley. If she is called Haley, I like Haley. If she is called Haley, I like Haley. It's that simple. But Haley is already not pure. Before he could finish speaking, Peter punched him hard in the face again. Rockey cried out in pain and covered his bleeding nose and mouth and fell to the ground in a mess. I was afraid that Peter would cause some fatal accident if he continued to fight. I quickly stepped forward and tightly him. Peter, don't fight anymore. Something will happen. Peter's face was very cold, but he still stopped. He glanced at Rockey with a bloody face, took out his phone, made a call and asked someone to deal with the aftermath. Only then did he pull me into his arms. Haley, let's go home. As I reached the car, I suddenly called out to him. Peter, do you believe it? What? I looked up at Peter. He was wearing a dark gray shirt, stern and dignified, exceptionally handsome. The way he had just gotten angry and struck out. If I had seen that version of him before, I would have been terrified and kept my distance. But now, I felt an overwhelming warmth. For those years, I desperately clung to a lifeline, only to find things turning out the opposite of what I hoped. The relatives who once cherished me no longer saw me as their jewel, though they didn't hit or scold me. Their arrogant, detached coldness was enough to make a teenage girl feel utterly crushed. My childhood friend, who grew up alongside me, distanced himself from me, looking down on me from the depths of his being. My biological parents were nothing but greedy, evil demons. Every day and night, I panicked at the thought of being sent back to them, never to escape. And I would never know, until my death, that someone had quietly liked me for so long. Fortunately, everything in my dreams would no longer happen. I hadn't reached the end of the line, foolishly trying to bind Rockey with my body. Nothing ever happened between me and Rockey. Haley, Peter cupped my face and leaned down to kiss me. I tightly gripped his sleeve, my fingers clenched and relaxed. Peter. As his kiss made it hard for me to breathe, my legs grew weak and I could only cling to his waist. Peter's kiss fell on my neck. Haley, I don't care about that. But hearing you say that makes me really happy. You know, men can be a bit selfish in this regard. I know, Peter. I'm telling you this because I don't want him to throw dirt on me. I'm doing it for you, but also for myself. At this point, I smiled at him and burrowed deeper into his trench coat. Peter, let's get home quickly. I'm freezing. Okay. He took my hand, holding it very tightly, and that grip would last a lifetime. When my relationship with Peter wasn't fully public yet, I went to the Maria family and talked with Maria and the elders for an entire afternoon. In the end, thanks to the intervention of the true eldest daughter Alice, I regained my guardianship. From that point on, I had no ties left with the Maria family. I chose this moment because I understood the Maria family too well. If they knew about my relationship with Peter, they would cling to his family like vampires. I didn't want to drag Peter and his family into that trouble. When I left the Maria house, Maria looked quite displeased. Haley, we've raised you for so many years and spent millions on you, yet we've received nothing in return. Actually, my mindset had completely changed by now. The Maria family had nurtured me for 16 years until the true eldest daughter Alice returned. I did endure some tough years, but I never went hungry. and Alice, who once harbored hostility towards me, for some reason suddenly changed her attitude. It was Alice who pushed for my forced return to my biological parents, after being pressured to drop out of school, but now, she helped me speak up for myself. She resolved my last lingering worry, and convinced Maria not to expose my unfortunate background. Now, I was the carefree Haley, no longer bound by anyone or anything. I was content. Madam, I bowed respectfully to Maria. I will never forget your kindness in raising me. That sounds nice. Maria shot me a cold glance. You can't even handle someone like Rockey. What future can you have? Forget it, let's just leave. Even looking at you is frustrating. Maria waved her hand. I didn't offer further explanations, just exchanged a glance with Alice. Mom, let me see Haley out. As Alice spoke, Maria's expression softened. Come back quickly, dinner will be ready. Got it. Alice smiled and pulled me out of the living room. We walked to the garden, where we paused in unison. I looked at her, and she looked at me, and we suddenly burst into laughter. Sister, I gently hugged her. Thank you. At the same time, Alice quietly said, Haley, I'm sorry. So many words remained unspoken, yet we understood each other completely. Alice's apology was for the Haley in my dreams, right? My eyes reddened, and Alice shed tears. Finally, she held my hand tightly. Haley, you must be very happy. I will, sister, you too. I would repay the kindness of the Maria family in another way, especially to Alice. She had suffered for 16 years while I enjoyed her blessings. In my dreams, I once resented her, but now, all past grievances were erased. When Peter took me to meet his parents, I honestly felt quite anxious. Peter's mother had started practicing Buddhism a few years ago for some reason. For years, she had been going to Pujizi temple to pray without fail. Don't be nervous, my mom is very kind since she found Buddhism, and my dad listens to her. Peter seemed to sense my anxiety and reassured me the whole way. But the closer we got, the more nervous I became. Peter, maybe we should do this another day, I'm scared. I clutched his sleeve and stopped, unwilling to go forward. Haley, Peter shook his head helplessly. Mom is already coming to greet us. Sure enough, Peter's mother had come down the stairs and was walking toward the car. I could only muster my courage and follow Peter. Mom, this is Haley. Hello, Auntie, I'm Haley. I hurriedly greeted her politely, handing over the prepared gift. Peter's mother smiled as she accepted the gift, but kept her gaze fixed on me. Even after we entered the living room, she continued to watch me intently. Later, she even insisted on taking me to the study upstairs. I felt a bit scared and couldn't help but look to Peter for help. But Peter's mother held my hand. Don't be afraid, Haley, let's go upstairs and have a little chat. She turned back and teased Peter. Don't be nervous, Mom won't eat your girlfriend. My face turned bright red. Auntie. Peter's mother seemed particularly cheerful, holding onto my hand. Peter, don't you think Haley is just as I said, beautiful and lovely? Mr. Peter was an exceptionally refined and gentle gentleman. Hearing his wife's words, he nodded repeatedly. Indeed, very beautiful and lovely, she's clearly a good girl. I was confused and a bit at a loss. Peter's mother held my hand, her eyes slightly reddening. Haley, don't misunderstand. It may sound absurd, but I've been having the same dream over and over for years. In the dream, Peter never married because of a girl. He died all alone in his 40s. At first, both his father and I didn't believe it, thinking it was just a dream. But later, everything in the dream started to come true. Tears streamed down Peter's mother's face. I've been eating vegetarian and praying for Peter all these years. I was truly worried that the end of that dream would come true. So I've been thinking, if that girl really exists and could be with Peter, how wonderful that would be. Now that I see you, I know my years of prayer were not in vain. Haley, you and Peter must take care of each other. My vision had blurred at some point. There are people in this world like my biological parents who are scum, but there are also loving mothers like Peter's. How fortunate I am to have met Peter and such a wonderful family, finally fulfilling all the regrets in my dreams. When we graduated from university, Peter and I got our marriage certificate. The wedding was still in the planning stages. I wanted something simple and low-key, but Peter and his elders would not agree. As soon as we got the certificate, I moved into Peter's house. While he was taking a shower in the bathroom, I found the pearl earring I had lost before under his pillow. But this time, I didn't put it back. Instead, I wore it on my ear, and I only wore the earring. When Peter came out of the shower, I was lying on his bed, covered tightly with his blanket, pretending to be asleep. Haley, hot and humid kisses gently fell on my cheek. I felt a bit ticklish, my eyelashes trembled slightly, but I still didn't open my eyes. Peter seemed to chuckle lowly, and then he kissed me again before getting into bed. But as soon as he lifted the blanket, he froze. Haley. The warm light of the night lamp spread out gently. It enveloped my whole body, the luster of the pearl faintly visible under the hair by my ear. Among the undulations, the light also cast patches of shadow in the light and dark. Large areas of black and white dotted with light red. It was as tempting as a white jade agate plate filled with red cherries. I was very shy at first, so nervous that my hands and feet were stiff. But when I saw the look on Peter's face at the moment, that nervousness suddenly disappeared. I sat up and directly pounced into his arms, hooking his neck. Just like that night in his dormitory, I was on his ear. Peter, do you like it? Your eyes are straight. I can feel that all the muscles in his body are tense. Body temperature is gradually rising. The skin is hot, as if the blood is about to boil. His Adam's apple rolled violently, and the vein on the side of his neck protruded very sexily. I turned my face, the soft lips brushed past the slightly protruding vein. Finally, it fell on his Adam's apple and took a light bite. It was like a sudden opening of the sluice gate. It was also like a dormant volcano that had been sleeping for thousands of years and suddenly erupted. Peter immediately turned the guest into the host and pressed my whole body on the bed. He kissed aggressively, very deep and heavy. I almost couldn't bear it. People are about to be crushed by him. Haley. He kept calling my name over and over again, tirelessly. At the end, he kissed me gently. If it hurts, bite me. I closed my eyes and made a light sound. My fingernails scratched his back, and I bit a deep tooth mark on his shoulder. But it still hurts. It hurts so much that I can't help crying. Peter. I looked at him through teary eyes, feeling a bit wronged. He looked so intimidating now. I instinctively thought he wouldn't be able to stop, but Peter halted all his movements, holding me tightly. I wrapped my arms around his waist, suddenly recalling that day at the airport. I couldn't help but ask, "Didn't you say that begging wouldn't help?" The desire in his eyes hadn't faded. You could tell from his expression how tortured and restrained he felt. Peter held me tightly and, in a hoarse voice, said, "I can't bear to." Peter, when did you start liking me? But he wouldn't answer, only tightening his embrace. Not telling, huh? I looked up at him, biting my lip in a smile. Then I won't say I like you either. Peter suddenly looked at me. In his eyes, beneath the raging desire, there was a tumult of deep affection. After a long moment, he finally spoke softly. "The first time I saw you, Haley, I thought I'd never have the chance for you to know." Suddenly, my heart ached. "It's okay, Peter, we have a lifetime together now." Yes, we have a lifetime together. Our fingers unknowingly intertwined. As I leaned up to kiss him, he lowered his head, kissing me back gently. "Peter, I think it doesn't hurt anymore. Do you want to continue?" Soon, the room was filled with sounds that made one blush, not fading for a long time. This night would be long, and even longer would be our lifetime together. In the surging tides of spring, let's slowly talk about our deep love. The end. If you like Puppy's story, please follow and like it. Updated every morning at 9 a.m.